So this is, we don't have a title for this. I guess I don't like
Basement Boys and Jennifer.
it doesn't come across the screen like the Basement Boys.
It should.
So it should. The main topic that we wanted to touch on was kind of the early days of Skellig. I have a story of when I joined Skellig. I don't know. Do you guys want to share maybe a story of, your memory? Maybe Paul, it's for you starting Skellig. Jennifer, I'm sure you have a story of when you joined Skellig.
I started Skellig the day I got the green card. So my green card, I was on a visa in America, and then I had everything lined up in LegalZoom.
Nice.
But you can't start a company if you're on a visa. So I had everything, credit card information and everything. I knew the green card was coming in the mail, and then the date came in the mail. Click. That's why Skellig started in April of 2010, because I got the green card in April of 2010.
That's pretty awesome. I never heard that.
Oh, didn't you? Well, there you go.
No.
You could fast forward through a lot of my beginning because it's not that interesting, I don't think. Well, maybe one day it's interesting, but it's not interesting yet. But I think what's interesting is letting Paul write a job posting, reading it, and only editing it for grammar. Because I don't know a lot about Delta V. I don't know how to get a good Delta V engineer to the table. And to put out what he put out that you responded to would never probably happen in 2024 Skellig, but it was important that it happened when it did, I think, because for some reason you were drawn to that, Greg.
Yeah, I was, because I was looking, obviously for another job. I was living in Syracuse at the time and knew that Boston was a hub for other pharmaceutical manufacturing plants. I don't really remember how I found the job posting, but I remember that I was looking at a lot of job postings and they all read exactly the same. We're looking for someone with 5 to 10 years of experience or this many years. And that's just like buzzword. And then I found one. We need engineers that can turn coffee grounds into Delta V code. And I remember the website at the time was like completely black, like background. Almost looked like you could make it in like GeoCities or something like, it was just like one of those old, it was like one of those old school kind of websites. I think during one of our circle meetings, Tim Sullivan, I can't remember if he basically found like you can look at archived versions of a URL and you can look at it at different time periods. I don't remember if we found the exact like black background website, but I remember reading the job description and kind of laughing over it. And it was just so refreshing to have a more like human voice behind a job posting. Like I've never been one to engage in like corporate politics. Like if anything, that really kind of turns me off. And it's like, people don't act like this. This isn't genuine when people get really into like corporate speak. So that job posting was like a breath of fresh air. And so I applied, and then this Irish man calls me and he's like, "Hey, we got your job application. Like, you sound great. Like, can I set up a phone interview with you on Friday?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." I was like so excited, just to get a response. Even back then, it was the age of like applying for jobs and you just don't hear anything, not even like an automated like "thank you for applying" message. I was all excited for my Friday phone interview. And on Wednesday, I got a phone call from Paul. I don't know if I said that. That man was Paul. And he said, "Hey, I'm calling for your interview." And I said, "Oh, I thought we were scheduled for Friday." And he goes, "Oh, I'm really sorry. You're right. We were scheduled for Friday. But can you do it now?" And I remember I was like at work. Like, I don't know if I'd just gotten out of a meeting, but fortunately at the time we were set up and we all had our own offices. So I was like, yeah, like, you didn't want to say no. Like, I was, again, super excited just to be having a conversation with a person. So I was like, yeah, we can do it now. We had obviously like an interview, it was probably went like, do you know control modules? Like, yeah, I know control modules. Like, do you know equipment modules? Yeah, I know equipment modules.
You'll do.
It was like,
I hope I asked better questions than that. But...
No, I honestly, I don't remember exactly how it went. What I do remember though was just like the speed of it, because what was even more surprising, rather than just being called on the wrong day, you actually was like, okay, yeah, you seem good. So here's what the offer is going to be. Like, what do you think? Yeah. And I was like, I would have said yes, honestly. Like, the offer was more money than I had ever dreamed of making, at the time. And so I would have said yes right in there, but I was just so taken off guard. I was like, can I think about it? And you're like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. So
God,
I think
I didn't realize I didn't realize how kind of it does sound a little insane. And like, I do remember like talking to you, because I remember being excited about you on paper, and then you sounded nice. I was like, oh shit, this is gonna work out. And I think I knew someone that knew you or something like that. But yeah, did I call you on the wrong day? I can imagine I did. Like, cause yeah, I was fully working, so I probably called you. I don't know when, but like,
you were a billable engineer. You probably called them on your way home from Santa Fe or something at that point.
Yeah.
I have no idea what time of day it was. I just know I was at work. But no, I hope I'm not trying to paint you, and you didn't come across as being like this crazy guy. I think it was just excitement and enthusiasm. And for like 25-year-old Greg, like, that was so refreshing. Automation can be really boring. It can be really dry. And then to actually talk to someone that's enthusiastic, it's very energizing. And you always brought like a lot of energy and excitement, I think.
Yeah, definitely would have been excited about you, because number one, you were like clearly a Delta V engineer that had experience. You had on-site experience. You were moving to Boston. Like, Boston's insanely short of talent locally, for automation. Yeah, there would have been a lot to be excited about,
You were also the first person that purely came to us from the internet. And I remember the feeling of trying to clean my house before a guest came over, prepping for bringing you on board, because I knew that you were the one person that like didn't have a strong tie to someone in the company already, or know us, or know the people that we were working with deeply. Like, you might be familiar with some of the names, but it was that feeling of, oh, this is a milestone in some way, that there's going to be just someone from the internet. So I guess I probably had a lot of the same concerns your mother had.
I was going to say, that's a nice segue to the next part of the story was, Mom, I just got this job offer out in Boston. It sounds awesome. Like, I can't wait. Yeah, my mom, super, super skeptical, right? She was like, this web, like, but my parents, if it
Your
wasn't...
mom worked on our website?
I'm sure she did. I mean, my parents, my dad they were both electrical engineers. My dad worked at GE, Lockheed Martin. He went on to BAE Systems, like, always worked for defense contractors, kind of as like if it wasn't a big name government company, like, it wasn't trustworthy. Like, no one in my family worked in companies that were less than 100 people. At this time, less than 15 people, right? It was a very much still a startup company, right? So my mom, she was very sad about me, moving out of Syracuse. And so I'm the youngest, and so her baby boy's leaving, right? And so she was certainly looking for every excuse, probably, whether, she didn't do this on purpose, and it wasn't trying to be manipulative, but I'm sure it played, subconsciously a factor into it. Like, oh no, you're going to Boston and you're with this fake company, and you don't know if it was real. And I remember, like, you even helped out with relocation. And so that was like step one, where I was like, yeah, maybe it's not a real company. Like, maybe this website is kind of sketchy. Like, maybe all that was weird, right? So yeah, maybe there was some self-doubt in my head, but I remember like working with, I don't know, someone. It was probably still you, Paul, on like getting the relocation set up. Well, here's a check to cover the moving costs. So if anything, I get out there, and if it's not I'll move out there. And if it's not a real job, I'll find another job while I'm out there. So my first day was like having to go to that office, New England Controls down in Mansfield. So I remember punching it into Google Maps, driving down there, walking into the office and being like, hey, my name's Greg. I'm here for like Skellig. And I just remember the relief I felt when they were like, oh yeah, Greg, like we're expecting you. I was like, okay, like
that's a totally real company that
job.
we definitely work with.
yeah. And it wasn't and then obviously you get your first paycheck and it's like, okay, things are great. But I think it wasn't until at least like 6 months of working at Skellig did I first meet Paul, and Kadar was the other person that we met, and we met up in Cambridge, met up there, and it was like, oh wow, like now I'm meeting people. And so certainly the realism of like the Skellig experience and it turning into like, okay, this is legit, this is a job, people are taking care of me. It was a slow acceleration. It was a very quick acceleration followed by like a very like slow acceleration. So if I had to graph the Skellig experience over time. And then,
Paul and I always talked about what people's families and friends' perceptions were of their job, because we also deeply agree that that's the truth. Like how you talk about your job to your friends is actually the truth. How my friends talk about how they feel about their jobs is probably the truest thing they'll ever say about their job, because the rest of it might have to be feedback that they give to their manager and hope to keep that job or something. So we always really actually cared about that. And it was always really funny for me to remember that your mom thought we were scammers and what we could do better in the future to prevent other people's moms from thinking that we were scammers. I say we do marginally better at onboarding and probably a lot better at posting and where we post and what we post. And, I do think a little bit of the flair was lost in how we post now for job openings, but
that job posting never really worked. It worked for Greg.
It only really worked on Greg.
Yeah, everyone else probably read it and thought, "Oh, that's yeah."
I was the dumb fish that bit the like weird looking bait, right?
But that's also, we were fishing for weird fish.
Yes. Yeah. Skellig's always been an experiment. So like behind the scenes, you'd have some kind of conversation where I would say, okay, Jennifer, I have this thing. It's a job posting. What if we do it this different way? What if we just like write this crazy stuff that's like just actually like what we think it would be like to work here or something, or describe the role? And we'd experiment with something like that from that. Whereas like, someone else would like, no, that's crazy. Shut that down. Let's do it properly. And we scale with that. And that's a legitimate answer. Like it's fair, but it's not the journey we were on. We were trying to experiment with like, how would you attract the right people? I remember I was pretty obsessed with like the culture, like Zappos at the time and stuff like that. And Tony Shea and how they were doing culture and creative weirdness, kind of just something that would be not straight laced.
Yeah, it's also because what I saw was the system wasn't set up to support certain people, especially marginalized people, in any way, shape, or form. So what type of posting would maybe call to them a little bit more to let them know that like this might be a good place for you to work? Because I want those people, I want their engineering. I think that it adds so much value to have those seats at the table, just diverse voices, diverse experiences. How you even got to an engineering degree is always interesting to me. And it's people like that bring so much when it comes to the collaboration and what a team feels like and what the ideals of the team are and their values and all of that stuff is what I was kind of fishing for. Because the other part of why we were willing to experiment with stuff like that is because there's a lot of ways to do things that work and they're right and they're legal and fair and all of the things are good. But if you just keep following the same path of the maybe even the companies that you don't like, but there's just certain things that everyone does the same, you're kind of going to get to the same answer. So we were hoping to get to a different answer that had a really diverse, really supportive culture, that lots of people were given seats at the table that maybe were just an impossibility in other companies. So I think we were able to do that really well. But I also think that it was hard to do it the way we did it. It was hard to get as excited about every single person the way we were excited about you, because it still happens. Like, we still get really excited about people, and they might leave the company for really good reasons. You know, a lot of it is just, that's just life, you know, and it's still hard to, I don't know, be tender at the top. And I am, and it hurts all the time, but it's also, the upswing is when you bet on people like that, you get to watch like all the good things that happen in their life too. Like, watching you grow up was really fun. Watching you get married was really fun. Just watching all those things happen, and then watching you plant roots and like start a family and start a flower farm. Like, those are things that have been a joy because you've let us watch them. So I don't know. I think there's an argument to be made for managing people and keeping your distance, and hoping for a sanitized version of work that would probably make me a lot saner at the end of the day, that I just can't choose, because I like this way, and the upswing is so good that the bad can get kind of contextualized a little bit as time goes on. But
first, thank you for, I don't know, those were some really nice things you said. I've always loved being in this company, and I still think the genuine approach has attracted a lot of people, and like myself, and things still feel genuine to me, even since, I guess, coming internal and seeing how things operate. It's always done with the best of intentions, and I don't mean that saying like, oh, it's a good intention and then it fell flat on its face, even though sometimes that happens, but like, everything is done with the interest and care of people, whether that's obvious or not at all to those people. Sometimes they don't know, right? And that's okay. It's one of those things where I'm doing this for you kind of thing, right? Because it's like, that's not gonna that's not how the way to live. That's not like being humble or whatever. But
I think when I got you and Andrew and Jen doing middle management and that type of, like, it's always been the scariest thing for me to point someone directly at the people that I was used to taking care of, and I was used to, I know all the intricacies and the complications in their lives that they wanted me to be aware of. I didn't really know how to like fairly communicate them, so I just had to let you guys form your own trust and own relationships with them. But it's really hard for people to understand that engineering management has so much to do with like really, really complex, hard, sad, heartbreaking, traumatic things that are happening in people's lives, and like trying to keep them and everyone safe through it, because a lot of times the safety is in their healthcare, the safety is in their paycheck, the safety is in all of the things that are genuinely so important. So it's easy to look around and be like, why don't you make quick decisions about people? And it's like, you don't want me in that headspace, I don't think, because that's not, first of all, it's not natural to me. And it's also, there's always so many things going on that are kind of private, that it is your job then as like their caretaker in a way to make sure that they get through what they get through, and the client feels no impact, they feel the least amount of impact, we feel the least amount, like what's the fairest to all concerned through here. Because the truth is, like, almost everyone goes through something pretty minor and pretty major once a year. So like, there's very few people that you can just kind of set and forget in a way. And I think that's such a privilege to be one of those people that doesn't need a lot and doesn't need any interventions at all in their entire career. That's nice. But like, I haven't been that way. Like, there's been so many times where Paul's been doing this alone because I was sick, because my baby is now in the room. Anyway, I literally just that was really funny because I was about to talk about her, which is that like, there's been like, I had a really complex pregnancy and then a lot of illness afterwards and tons of surgery. How would that have gotten contextualized in a company? Like, in a big company that like I would be applying for leaves. Maybe my management gets sick of me, because I've been throwing up, but I'm not actually like on a disability, but I throw up 6 times a day. Like, what are you supposed to do about that? If you want your team and you believe that that's a person on your team that adds a value that no one else can add in the way that they add, you do everything you can to like protect and make sure that we all get through the hard time together. So it's been, a lot of leading by example. Paul always has complimentary things to say about me and people, but I learn a lot because I was given that kind of example. Paul, you always let me just be who I was, normalized everything if you agreed with it or not, or if you understood it or not. And then I would force, explain it to you in graphic detail of why you should understand it, why you should care about it, what the systemic issues are. But yeah, you were able to hear it. So that's kind of what I expect of engineering management in general now, is that they hear it the same way that I was able to hear it. They normalize things the way I was able to normalize things, and they find like the path forward that protects the people the best. And that's a real thing, not just corporate speak, like protects them, keeps their insurance if they need it.
There's a good argument to be made for kind of professionalism, or what you think is kind of quote unquote professional. But then a lot of people, once something goes off the beaten path, you really get crushed by the bus of professionalism then, because you no longer useful or apply. But like when someone shows up and they're able to provide value, and that the company, the collective, will benefit from their context, and when they're back on their feet and they're able to deliver value again or create value, that they're an important part of the team. So whether it's an engineer, it's a manager, or someone like Jennifer, where, okay, like if you lose her, right, then you've lost all this context. So now you're starting over with someone new or something. Think about the risk that introduces. But I don't know. I just think that there's a lot left to be desired around like a normalized approach to building a team. And it's a fun experiment to try to figure out how to explore that. So a lot of the talk or the decisions that will be driven by Jennifer will come from some kind of context that I might not know a lot about, and sometimes it's a learning experience, and like, oh wow, yeah, we should do better with paternity leave. Why don't we? And it's like,
there's a lot of things that are like systemically really hidden and can be packaged in really digestible ways that a lot of really kind brains can read the same sentence and not see how they're othering a group or a person or a gender or anything. They don't see where it is a problem because we have so much bias that we don't even know we have. It's like truly peeling back a serious onion, and then you couple that with maybe substandard education, Bangor area school district 4 out of 10. You really struggle to put the pieces of the whole picture together, because to learn about history and to learn about business and all of those things, to learn about it from one perspective seems kind of damaging to me. So I've always tried to make sure that I was reading a lot of diverse voices that talked about what effective leadership looks like, what effective communication looks like, and how not to get blindsided by something or walk into something knowingly thinking you're doing the right thing, but it's not good enough. So I think I ask a lot of you, especially, and Andrew and Jen, to dig deeper in places that are really, really uncomfortable. So, and I think that's the little bit of the difference of working internal to Skellig and then also working at Skellig and being on a client. I don't always ask that of engineers because I don't actually think it's their job to dig deeper with certain clients. But I do expect people who take care of Skellig engineers to be willing to do that uncomfy work.
Damn.
Do you want to define uncomfy a little bit more? It's not to take a beating or to give out a beating,
No, it's to fairly weight all of those things together in the same sentence sometimes. Like the conversation around parental leave was one of my favorite conversations that's ever happened here, because I thought I was going into that to kind of strong arm my will and to see the team come to the fair, what I consider the best like conclusion, which is that let's call it parental leave. Let's acknowledge that really bad paternity leave support the patriarchy and shift that load to the mother wherever she works, even if she doesn't work at Skellig. It's not fair. And just the way it's set up is not fair. So like, what do we do about it in our small little ecosystem to try to demonstrate that something can work and still be profitable? Like we can work, still have good pay and still be profitable and take care of people well. It's hard though. And it's not like, that's where I start to get very systemically angry because I start seeing that it's not set up to work.
You guys, as Skellig in general, does take care of people. Our healthcare is awesome. Like it is really good. And you could go to some big companies with all the money and backing in the world and not get the same healthcare that we do. And that's not to plug Skellig. I just think that is to, give yourself some credit. And I'm not buttering my own bread because I had no say or part in creating, I guess, our health plan. Like that was already established.
It was actually kind of an engineering decision too, to do that way, because I remember it was where Paul and I realized early on that we actually really aligned on some of the big concepts, because his idea was like, my ideal engineer that can innovate and ask those kind of questions isn't worrying about, how to pay his bills, how to pay his family's bills. And I'm like, that makes sense to me. My ideal employee isn't worrying about that because I think it's gross. I think that the fact that you can work a full-time job that you had to go get a degree for and still get slapped with, medical bills that are absolutely just going to drag your whole family down sucks. And I think that's a systemic issue. So I was like, something he's saying and something I'm saying are really aligning in this center of a Venn diagram in a way of like what we believe about the employees.
It's not easy because the cost keeps going up 10 to 15% every year. We keep the multiplier the same. But I think what it drives is it forces efficiency, prioritization within management, things like that. I think it keeps challenging us to keep the healthcare kind of where it is.
Now we're leveling up to where I think that our care can exceed where it is. And I think there are things to be addressed, especially like, we started out with a really young, I guess, company, for lack of better words. We had a lot of, so now we're like trying to weather how to grow with them, how to grow up with their families, how to still have a seat at the table at their house when it's time to talk about things that they like about their day. Watching people have babies and bring children into their home is one of the most delightful things, but also knowing exactly what it does is scary too, because I'm scared for them. And I know that there's going to be bills, and I know that there's going to be time and energy and just lots of heartache, and it just puts 10x on every emotion.
That was something I was going to comment on earlier. Like things like that make you realize why there's more crappy companies out there than good companies, because it is a lot easier not to care about people and to disassociate those kinds of feelings, because
that was the advice given to us by so many lovely, sane, and kind people, was to draw better boundaries and to be able to unplug from certain things. But I don't think 10 years into this that I've done it incredibly well. I think I've drawn healthier boundaries that I won't feel as depleted as I used to in like 2022 or so. Maybe I'm, doing just a slightly better, marginally better every year to just draw like, maybe I won't pick up the phone and it's okay to call them tomorrow. That's my idea of like a really healthy boundary, but it has nothing to do with how I care about them, because I also realized I couldn't draw that boundary because it wasn't up to me in a way. It's just hyper specific to me, but
I think I'm still trying to figure out how to draw those boundaries.
It's really hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's when you start, even like in the topic of like staffing a project, especially one that involves a relocation or, a cross country move, there is some level of responsibility you feel that like, wow, not only am I uprooting this person and moving them across the country, like I think it's going to be a good opportunity. I think they're going to work with good people, but there is a risk that it's not as good as what they had. I think about that a lot, like on the weekend. And you're laying in bed, and you're thinking about some of these strategic moves of moving people around, and it would be a lot easier if it wasn't people, if it was just chess pieces. But it's real people that I've met and that are great, genuine, kind-hearted people, and it just
and they love their families, and they've told you lovely things about their friends and where they live, and now you want to move them across the country, and maybe they're just fresh out of college and have maybe never even been, significantly to that state or that region, and now you're asking them to go there. That's something that Paul and I never took lightly, and we've always tried to protect the people that have really strict boundaries around their location, because there's systemic reasons for that too, because I think this industry was set up for people that could easily leave, for a month at a time or something, and go back. And that's just not how a lot of our families are set up in Skellig. So we want to try to protect as much as we can, but there are times when the work requires on site, or we know that their career is being stunted by that lack of like plant floor operator experience that adds a sanity to what they're doing. So if I know it's important, and if I know it needs to happen, I'll try to find the best possible outcome for it. But it's absolutely one that keeps you up at night of like, are they happy? Was that bad? Is this scary? Are they okay? Do they know how to drive? Can they rent a car? Are they old enough to rent a car?
I'm thinking of one individual, and I won't say their name, but those exact, like when you said like, wow, they've never been in Boston. Are they going to be able to drive around Boston fine? And like, what if they get in a fender bender? Are they going to know what to do? Like, I've had those exact thoughts. And it's like, it's easy to let them stress you out. And
I do too. I don't really mind it, because there's this part of me too that's like, none of this would be happening if I didn't make, a couple of decisions here. I feel responsible to the end of it. I know that there's a better boundary to be drawn here, but I haven't seemed to draw it, which is like, even when I see two employees like disagreeing and I see that they're going to be okay, I still think this is all because of two decisions that I made at some point. So I still feel responsible for the outcome.
Well, I'll say former engineer, I still consider myself an engineer, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I was a person that was getting moved around. Like I did a big relocation, right? I started in Boston, and now I'm down in Virginia. And I didn't pick Virginia. I think whenever the conversation came up, I was like, hey, do you want to go to Virginia? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm ready to leave Boston.
It for him.
It was honestly life-changing in the most positive of ways. So growing up in Skellig, being a part of, I guess, business moves that did impact me heavily on a personal level, like getting great healthcare, getting a great salary. If there was a decision, let's say, that you made a long time ago, and suddenly the company just ended, right? There was like way more positives. My life is better than I could have ever imagined right now because of Skellig. And like, if the company ended tomorrow, like I would be okay. Like I'd find another job, and I would take the positive things with me. So it's like, it's this uphill climb, right? And I am at a height where I'm so happy right now. If Skellig went away tomorrow, I wouldn't come crashing down and become like a gambling addict or something like that.
Yeah, you have a good foundation of healthy, happy life that you can build off of. And you know what? I think if I was able to tell that part to me at the end of the night, I would be in a much mentally like healthier place than I normally am. But that was also one of our huge like feedback points over the years, is you and Paul are so problem focused. And I'm like, that's fair. You're right. But we do a terrible job at like, even with each other celebrating the wins. So I've just make sure like when I get really important feedback that I know my brain needed to see and hear, I make sure I send it to Paul now, because there was a period of time after I came back from my maternity leave and Paul decided to double the company, which we can get into on another episode if you would like. Because there is a true pre-baby moment and post-baby moment for me to come back to a completely changed landscape. I'm like, what's MES? What's 4.0? What are we doing? What do you mean? But there's just a moment in there too. We need to celebrate wins a little bit better. And Paul and I kind of stopped doing that during those times because things were not on fire, but they weren't not. They were smoldering. It was building to a point where we realized we had to have plans for the people that we hired, because now we all like them because we hired them. So everyone's in on them. So we wanted to make sure that we could figure out how to keep them, especially if the one thing that they were hired for went away. So being able to respond to that kind of led to us being like in a state of overwhelm for quite a while. And I think that we did a poor job at telling each other that good things were still happening at Skellig and just really focus on the problem still. So
yeah, well, it's hard to celebrate any kind of win when you know that there's someone that you're potentially letting down somewhere, and it's not right until it's right for everyone. So you got to keep working at it. If the whack-a-mole keeps popping up, you got to stay on your toes, whacking problems. So yeah, you do become problem oriented, but that's the joy of it too. I think we went through what, as best I can understand, like a very traditional business problem where you react to an opportunity in the market and you grow a lot all at once. But it's a really bad way to grow. There's a lot systemic growth is really the goal now, long term. And I don't think I would ever react or want to be part of a company that grew to an opportunity. I think it's a big mistake because it looks obvious. It's like it's such a trap. So I don't know how you feel about it. Like, because yeah, to your point, like Jennifer, we brought in all these wonderful people. It's fantastic, right? But then you got to keep the show on the road, and we didn't have the infrastructure really to kind of make sure everything was just smooth sailing, you know?
And then we also hit all of those hurdles of like, once you reach 50 employees, here's all these new things that you guys need to learn, and how and I don't think we took any of them lightly, especially the HR ones. We do actually want to be fair, and we do actually, so like even some of our well-intentioned practices, like we're like, oh my goodness, okay, good to know, so it's forced Paul and I to like learn as we grow and grow as we learn. But I don't know. I know that you have some strong feelings about the reactive growth. I didn't mind it. There's a degree of unmitigated like Paul gambling that I've always signed up for here that I think is important. And so we have lots of people now around us to help prevent anything that didn't get enough fact checking at this point. But there's a degree of it that I don't mind. Like, I don't mind the calling someone and kind of wanting to offer them on the spot, because I think you can tell kind of through at least like just a good, true, genuine conversation if you will be a good fit or not. So maybe that looks like an immature company. We advance someone to the next stage quicker. I don't know, but there's something about that is fine to me, and it doesn't rattle me.
But do you think there's something to like the simplicity of like, okay, I know this is going to be a square deal. I know I can put this person into this job. They're going to do great. They can communicate well. They know certain things about automation that I know they need to know. It's going to work out. And then you take that jump. Do you really need a committee to make that decision? And then when a company is small and you make these fast decisions, right? Yeah, you will make some mistakes, but you'll also make some mistakes even if you have the committee gathering around, but you'll probably be slower about it. I think there's a balance there and everything, but
I was going to say I agree with the balance. I think as in the positions we're in now where we want to take care of people, we're probably, like you said, more over accommodating or trying to be over accommodating for certain things. But yeah, when you're an engineer and you get put on a job, like there is this sense of like, no, like, thank you, but like, I got this, so this like sense of autonomy where you don't really need the cavalry always at your back. You kind of need to be a little bit in charge of your own destiny, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Self-starters do really well here because there's only a light amount that I think Paul and I can genuinely provide to someone's day job. There has to be a lot of accountability of how you show up to your team, how you decide to show up to the client, that you push yourself to do whatever today's best is and kind of make sure that the main points get done well, which are honestly, to me, it's the team. It's what you're responsible for, what you're accountable for. How you communicate if you can't do it is important. How you talk about mistakes is important. But those are all things that I can only suggest, politely coach into people. I'll do my best, but it's all things that people decide for themselves on their own. To be on the consulting side, you kind of need to have all of those things because I do expect that we show up to clients in a very value add way. And I expect that adding a Skellig team to a Skellig member to their team does actually make the team more cohesive because I know that they have supportive and I know that they have management that wants to keep them safe and well. So they know that they can come back and say that this is not the place for me and I need, help with an exit strategy and we can figure that out. So if there's a bunch of people just standing around looking at a problem, that's kind of my nightmare. I just want Skellig person to feel like they're empowered enough and they're safe in their job and they can say the thing is wrong, because I think that's the most important thing that I seek when I try to find like who would actually make me more comfortable knowing that they worked on this, and would they be able to say the thing that maybe the people whose salary is tied to that thing's success, would they say it? Would they feel empowered to say it and know that they're not going to lose their job, even if it was an unpopular sentiment? Hey, your Cybertruck is ugly.
It's kind of cool. No, I'm just kidding.
It's ugly.
Get into that. It's kind of ugly.
We won't have, we can get into Elon Musk in another one, but it's just like, I want to know what the big scary fear is, I guess. And I think that we don't do enough in corporate America to allow the employees of that company to say it well. And I think that's where I find the value add in consulting is like put kind of an objective person in there that's just seeking the truth, that's just seeking the safe, effective way to do something that follows the rule that, compliance.
All progress starts with the truth. I think we're stage builders. That's the best you can do. That's why the engineer is number one, not the client with Skellig, or we say that because the clients just want a great engineer. And if you pay an hourly rate or a project for an engineer, if you can have an engineer that's, looks good on paper, yeah, that's fantastic. But you're not going to get their best if, we've done something to badly set them up, to show up for your project. They don't want to be there. They wish they were somewhere else. They're working way too much, whatever the problem is. Like they're underpaid, so they're stressed about other stuff. They have medical bills. Like if we don't get the stage right, then you can't have an engineer be creative, solve the problem in front of them. And you can say there is room for adult behavior. And we do talk about Skellig being a team, not a family, because people do show up here to create value. But when they do, if you take care of them, everybody wins. And you don't get it right every time, but you try. And I think that's what hopefully we'll always do with Skellig, is just try to build a better stage and keep going at that.
Build a good platform for engineers was on our GeoCities website, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah. Thanks for bringing us full circle.
You're very welcome.
No, this was fun. This was kind of a little more reminiscing and kind of more casual. And all right, guys.
Have a good evening.